This is the Slasher Panel. I am your host, Ronnie Angel, and I'm sure that a lot of you are already familiar with me. 5 years running, I was the announcer for Crypticon. This is my first year that I'm not doing that, so I decided I need a little bit of a break. So I'm just doing the panels and interviews this year, and I'm into a little bit of everything. Was a pro wrestler for 10 years, writer for a couple of websites, Watch, Play, Read, and besthorrormovies.com. And I have also acted with my cohort here. And yeah, I will turn it over to you.
I just realized I'm shooting down. Hang on a second.
Put them in the
I swallowed it.
Oh.
Okay. So, hi, I usually go by Nessk, in general, even here, but this year I'm Chelle Nessk. And so I was like, what? That's too big.
Yeah.
My whole name.
Is it going to be like an unpronounceable glyph next year?
Yeah, it's just gonna be like, this is.
The artist.
The artist formerly known as Nessk, formerly known as
actually-
Chelle Nessk.
Right. Well, it's usually
Go
just
with it.
Nessk. So I was surprised to see my full name. So that's happening.
What else have you done?
I'm a
Chelle Nessk.
filmmaker, and I am a director. I am a writer. I wrote for ABC Family and Disney for a short stint, and that was a lot of fun. I do not work with them anymore because I am an independent agent, and that allows me to work more in the field of horror without any stipulations. Let's see here. I do a lot of stuff, and all of it is in horror. So horror, science fiction, high fantasy, dark comedy. You know, I'll do like a romantic comedy if everybody dies. And then, can I boast really quick?
Sure, go
Okay.
ahead.
If you play tabletop role-playing games, like Firefly, you will actually see me in it, just with short pixie blonde hair. I'm one of the main people in the Alliance. That is cool.
That
Right?
is cool.
Yeah, oh man. Sorry, I'm still giddy about it. Legend of the Five Rings, that's a really old card game. It's kind of like Magic the Gathering, Gathering Masquerade. That just came out. I'm in a number of tabletop role-playing games, comic books, video games, that kind of thing. I'm a body model for Green Cat Studios, among some other game companies. And so sometimes, like if you're shooting at some chick or some chick shooting at you, it's probably me. There's a good chance, yeah. So that's cool. I'm done. I'm so sorry. I'm so braggy.
You've got a lot to talk about.
Mr. K.
My name is Tony Kay. I write about film for City Arts Magazine and website. I also write about, I was dubbed the informal B-movie evangelist at another website that I write for called thecentric.com. And since we're talking about interesting stories, I won't give you the whole thing. About 10 years ago, I was on a game show on the independent film channel called The Ultimate Film Fanatic. And I was chosen the Ultimate Film Fanatic out in the Pacific Northwest, during which Henry Rollins dubbed me devastating, gnarly, and crushing. So that's my brag book thing. You can find it on YouTube. I look like scarily, pathetically uncharismatic, and was even 5 minutes after being told I was devastating, gnarly, and crushing by Henry Rollins. The next thing that he said was, "Do you get out much?" Fail.
Nice.
But let's talk slashers.
Hell yeah, my specialty. I don't know if many of you know this, but I've actually been writing a slasher book for the last couple of years. I've got about 20 or so interviews in it with people like Adrian King, Felissa Rose, Daryl Wilcher from it was Rip on Sleepaway Camp Part 3, the killer from Don't Go in the Woods. Some really obscure names that are in that book. And I just think it's awesome that I was able to even contact some of these people. So that's where this whole panel came from. It's always been my specialty. It's always been something I've always been into back in the days of the mom and pop video stores. That was what I always looked for, trying to find it. That was one of my goals, trying to see every slasher movie which I found is
A daunting task, I'm sure.
yeah, it's damn near impossible to see all of the slasher movies out there. So yeah, well, what I wanted to do today was try to just touch on as many as possible, and some of the different genres involved. There's so many subgenres that are in the slasher films, and basically, I just want to try to educate people on, hey, if you like this, maybe you might want to check this one out. So now you kind of know my agenda, and that's what I'm going to try to do here. First off, I just want to say that there's so many different genres, subgenres to the slasher film. Like, I've got a list here that's starting, it's like there's wilderness slashers, school slashers, holiday slashers, summer camp slashers. God, there's the foreign ones, there's the parodies, it's just endless. Endless.
One thing that I think might be cool is going through each of these individual slasher subgenres and just giving us what you feel is like, this is an absurd term to use, but like the Citizen Kane of the wilderness slasher.
Yes.
The Lawrence of Arabia of the holiday slasher.
And then on the other hand, the Plan 9 of the genre.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll do both.
So yeah, let's hear about wilderness slashers here.
Okay, let's start out with the wilderness slashers. I guess I'll start with the worst of the bunch first. And there's I found the wilderness slasher is one of the worst subgenres out there. And there's some really shitty movies in this. That you got like Don't Go in the Woods. I don't know if anybody has seen that one. It's
Holy Christ.
it's
Yeah.
It is a measure of the ardent devotion of horror fans that isn't there like a 2 DVD set of that out?
there is.
Guy going up the wheelchair.
Oh God.
Remember the film with the same name that was Don't Go in the Woods, not related, but it was a musical?
Oh, that was even worse.
Yeah, no.
That's like this.
We're not gonna do that.
I love in the original how they tell the sheriff they still have to go up there to save someone. He's like, well, I gotta eat this stack of pancakes first, but we'll go up there around 4 o'clock today.
I'll get to it eventually. I'll get to it
Yeah.
eventually.
It's like, what?
I don't know. But in case you're not familiar with Don't Go in the Woods, it's a very simple plot. What little plot there is of it. And that's that people go camping in the woods and this guy randomly kills them. That's it. There's nothing more to it. Some of these people aren't even introduced. It's just like, hi, I'm on the screen now, and oh, fuck, I'm dead. And it just goes through that, and just countless people that just get killed, no introduction, nothing to the character at all. And it's actually one of those movies that is so bad, I would say it was the worst, but it's grown on me. It's really grown on me.
It's like
so
your
bad.
college roommate that farts and comes in at 4 in the morning and eats all your food, but somehow you love him. That's Don't Go into the Woods. It's the obnoxious college roommate of
So,
wilderness slashers.
I would say that that's the worst, but no, that's not the worst. Because I've seen much worse.
You've seen worse.
And I think for the worst of that one, I would have to go with a movie called Berserker. Is anybody familiar with that one? Are you familiar with that one?
No, do tell.
It sounds like an awesome concept on paper. And it's about, it starts out telling about the Vikings and how they would have a berserker in their tribe that was the one that they really, they kept this guy under lock and key. And they would release him in the battle and he would just go on a rampage. And it's just like an animal. And that's where this one goes. It apparently there was one that was left behind. I don't know how he ended up surviving these
Frozen in an
hundreds
ice
and
cone or
hundreds of
something?
years.
In a glacier.
Yeah, it's something that
Like a caveman.
they don't even really explain it. He's just
There's no
there.
room for suspension of disbelief. It's just like, he was so crazy, he lived all these years and he's gonna kill again.
There you go. There you go. And that's what happens. And the kills themselves, oh God, it's just like a bear claw. It's like Grizzly. If you've seen the movie Grizzly with the grizzly bear, it's like that. It's just somebody holding a fuzzy bear claw, and then it's just like, dead, dead. And then it's just like you see this berserker, this Viking running around the woods, and then all of a sudden there's also a bear running around the woods. It's like, which one is it then? You're just confused the entire time.
That's the closest thing to like a mystery or nuance that they're going to set up. Is it the bear or is it the berserk Viking who just garroted them?
Yeah. And then I don't give a shit if I'm spoiling. Nobody wants to see this movie anyways. At the end it comes down to bear versus Viking.
Territorial.
So, I don't know, you're selling this shit. Okay, I'd buy that for $1, you know?
It's bad though, it's irredeemably bad. So I'd say for the worst of the genre, that's it right there, is Berserker. For the best when it comes to the wilderness slashers, there's one out there that it completely breaks all the conventions of the slasher film. It is not like teen victims or anything. This is like middle-aged doctors camping in the woods on a hunting trip. And it has Hal Holbrook in it. It's a really old, obscure movie. It's just phenomenal. And it's really sadistic too. Like they wake up and their shoes are gone. And they have to hike back to civilization. And the killer just leaves like traps everywhere. Like there's only one way to cross the river.
I saw it was on network TV.
I saw
So
that
really,
too.
yeah. So a lot of the brutality is cut out, but that's interesting because it's as much it's cross-pollination of a slasher film with the Deliverance style wilderness brutality survival type films. It's an interesting, and it's got really good performances.
Mm-hmm.
Hal Holbrook's great. Canadian actor named Lawrence Dane, who actually is in Scanners, is in it as well. And the most recent, I haven't seen the movie in like probably 25 years, but on one of the 42nd Street Forever trailer compilation DVDs, there's a trailer. There's the trailer is on one of those, and it gives a very good taste of the film, and it's also got some very interesting commentary by a couple of writers from like Fangoria and AV Freaks and stuff. So the movie itself is worth checking out. And compilation. So that's a good. Yeah, it's a great movie.
What would you say is your favorite of that, the wilderness or the worst?
I would probably. I mean, I am very fond of Just Before Dawn.
Ooh, Just Before Dawn is an amazing movie.
Yeah, it's just very lean, very noble, and it does that good job of not giving you a huge amount of screen time on character development, but you feel like you kind of know the characters, you know, when you're placed right in the situation. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite wilderness slasher.
My favorite thing about Just Before Dawn is just the way that they film it. It's very subtle,
Yeah.
and there's just so many scenes where you're looking just at one thing, but in the background there's something else going on that they're not even telling you about. Like my favorite part is where they're swimming in the water, and all of a sudden you just see the camera is focused on the couple, and you just see one of the hillbillies just start to come down the rocks, just slowly behind them, and then just start walking into the water, and then just going farther and farther and farther, and then he just disappears completely. And it's one of those things where you're just like, wait a minute, I'm gonna hit rewind here. Did I really just see that? Oh, wow.
Back in the day when that came out, of course, there was no, you couldn't, I mean, granted, if you got it on VHS, you could, but when you saw it in the theater, it's like, it would be almost subliminal when you'd see stuff like that. It get in the back of your head.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, John?
Well, let's see here. As far as wilderness slashers go, I don't want to say my least favorite because I know the filmmaker.
Oh,
Yes.
God. Now you've got us like totally.
I can't do it.
It's our secret. Nobody will say anything.
No.
Well, I'll just sort of walk by him like he's got toilet paper.
No, we won't do that. So I plead the fifth on least favorite and good favorite. Now, do you consider like summer camp movies that take place in the wilderness as wilderness slashers?
Are those, yeah, that's a good question.
I was
You know,
gonna
or
put
like The
that-
Hills Have Eyes, that kind of thing, because that's a wilderness
I was gonna put
slasher.
Hills Have Eyes as a wilderness slasher. The summer camp slasher, that's a category all on its own.
It is really, but
Yeah,
like
I have
so
some
much of
strong
it happens in the wilderness.
Which
so
one's the
I've
burning?
always-
True.
I've always been a little conflicted about that, but as far as favorites, I'm gonna go to the obvious, The Hills Have Eyes, only because my most recent viewing, I was watching it with somebody who actually is not into horror, and so every time like we film, like they come onto my set to film, they gag. They're like, that looks like a liver. You know, and it's really cool because it does look like a liver because it is. And, you know, so like we're watching it and then the girl takes the baby, you know, and everything and protects it. And he's all, oh, she's saving the baby. And it just, I don't know, like sometimes maybe I'm fickle. But it really like reawakened my love for the movie because I was just like, wow, this movie is so good. You know, campy as it is, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's so good that I got somebody who's not comfortable with horror, who's not a horror fan. And they are so involved in the story that they're actually dissecting the complexity of like your bad guys. So I don't know, I rather appreciated it. And so since then it's kind of reinvigorated my love for it. So I have to go for the obvious.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a very good one, and it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
To classify it that way. Which is, not to interrupt, but no, just to ask you, since you are definitely the expert on this panel on this, what do you consider makes a slasher movie?
There are so many things that go into that. I would say that, God, if I could just start from the top. Final girl. Almost all of them have the final girl that survives. I would say, well, the slasher itself is usually, they use some kind of a weapon, like a sharp implement of destruction, and very rarely would they use a gun or anything like that. Usually there's something in the past that caused this. You know, Michael Myers, it was one of those things where it was killing the sister, and then it went up through the years. It just, God, it's hard to even say with him. He just had a kind of vendetta, I guess.
Slashers are more intimate.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It
It happens
is.
in-
There, you have to have
it happens in
contact
3 feet.
to slash.
every slasher movie has.
Yeah.
And with the slasher movies too, it usually has a pretty big body count. Like, it's usually what rule of a slasher is that every several minutes there should be a death. So it kind of keeps you glued to the screen. Of course, there's some that kind of break that. Like, God, there's some, like one of my personal favorites is Alice, Sweet Alice.
Oh,
Mm.
And there's only a few deaths in that movie, but it is through and through a slasher film.
Right, it escalates.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of it is, that's another part of it is a lot of slashers have these disguises too. Like Michael Myers had his mask, Jason has the hockey mask, Alice, Sweet Alice, it was the girl with the baby doll mask.
Or, I can't remember this, the Vermont Sack.
Town That Dreaded Sundown, or Friday the 13th Part 2,
Yeah.
which I have
Which came
always
out
said
afterwards.
is connected.
Mhm.
I still think that those two movies
There's some
could be
Easter
somewhat
eggs
connected
between
there.
the two.
Yeah, yeah. I think Jason was a busy guy. And there's just a lot of things like that. Like I was saying, that something in the past that brings it on. And like there's so many of the movies, like Prom Night, for example. It starts out with them as kids, and then it shows the one kid getting killed, and then it's like, okay, this is gonna mean something later on. And then you watch like a more obscure Offerings, and it's just like the weird kid, and he's the neighborhood kid say, hey, I dare you to walk around the edge of this well. And, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Oh, hey, by the way, boom!
The beginning of the
Uh-oh,
burning.
He's gonna be pissed. So, a lot of it is a revenge type of thing, and then, like, of course, Friday the 13th. And that's one of my favorite ones to discuss, actually. We've discussed this a lot with, you know, her son drowning, and then she blames it on the camp counselors. But if you really want to get in depth into that one, I can get in depth about that. I had a theory about that people say that Jason, he became a zombie in part 6, right? Technically though, if he drowned when he was a kid, wasn't he a zombie all along? Or if you take it another route, it's like, okay, maybe he did survive, maybe he didn't drown, maybe he lived in the woods, eating animals and crap and teaching himself stuff, but in that case, you've got to look at it deeper. That means Mrs. Voorhees was actually a horrible mother.
Yeah.
Because you got to think, Camp Crystal Lake is not that big of an area, right? Yeah, and you would think that she would look for her son if he might somehow be alive. But it just seems like she just gave up all hope and was just saying, just inconsolable, like, my son is dead. Get in the car. I can't believe it. My son is dead. My son is
No,
dead.
he's right here in front of you.
He's knocking on the window.
I'm over
He's
here.
Like, Mom, I'm here, seriously. No, my son is dead. I'm gonna kill everybody now.
Make Kevin a helper.
Yes.
Well, you and I have talked about this too, because I'm on the opposite side of that, being a mom. I always thought that, you know, he is walking around, but I think because she's experienced the loss of her son, that she cannot accept that he's alive. She is permanently in that grief. So when she sees him, she thinks it's like a spirit of him. Well, he's alive, and I'm going to go eat berries because mom's not making lunch.
So she's a bad mom, but due to insanity.
Okay, yeah. I can
Pleads
see
the
that. I
insanity
can
on
buy that one.
Not too bad. You made that sweet ritual shrine for her.
Yeah. So what would you think makes a slasher?
I think that one of the things that is charming about that's a weird word to use, about is that they do skew to a very strict formula. You have, usually it's some sort of semi-remote setting, usually a vendetta or revenge or some sort of childhood or early life trauma occurs. The killings invariably have to be stabby as opposed to choky or drowny. You know, much stabby is very important, I think.
Stabby and slashy?
Yeah,
Stabby,
stabby and slashy, exactly. And also more often than not, it's obviously not definitive. It's usually the youth who fall victim to
Usually is.
ridiculous. So that's kind of my take, which is more or less what you've kind of been, alluding to anyway. So yeah, I think we're all on the same page.
And most of them too, of course, have the sex and violence. They go
Yes.
hand in hand, so you can see that in the majority of them. What would you say?
Put it out earlier by you when you were talking about the intimacy of like the stab and slash, and like that right there, like you could claim as little as 1 to 2 victims in the film, so long as it takes up the majority of it, or the focus is primarily there. I've seen some very subtle films where I walked away from it going, ooh, is that a slasher? Or, it's, I actually tried playing with that a couple of years ago. I told you about it, a short film called Hollow Tree. And I tried playing with the slasher genre, but in like a very muted fashion. And so, I don't know how well it turned out. You guys can judge it tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Tear it apart, I don't care. It was an attempt. Actually, Pets is going to be there too.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll be there for that one.
Yes, you will.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like so long as there is an intimacy and a strange case, so there's nothing wrong with me. My mother's had me tested before I say this. Now, there's something about the horror slasher films, like all of them in general, you're gonna find, how often do you actually cheer for the protagonist? Most of the time, you're seeing the antagonist, I'm trying so hard not to curse. You're like,
Earmuffs.
go and tear them to bonkers. You know, and so like that. So you know, yeah, pieces. And that's to me what really makes a slasher is the intimacy between the slash and stab, and then like the weird impulse that it drives in you to be like, get him, get him, get him, get him. And like there are some films that I have seen where like you honestly can't feel that way, like you don't want to see them kill the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually leaves me walking away wondering, well, okay, was that a slasher or not? Because I had no sympathy for the devil, and for a good slasher, you kind of the devil needs to be likable. It needs something to it
Likable
to
and
make.
charismatic.
Yeah, exactly.
People
So,
love
I guess
Michael
that's a
Myers
slasher
and
for me.
Jason and Freddy. They love them. They're like, they are the stars of their movies.
Oh, definitely.
It doesn't matter if
Realistic
they're the final
about it.
girl or not. They're the
Yeah.
ones you're
You know
somewhat
what,
cheering
then,
for. So.
That brings me to this next subject I want to bring up is the killers themselves.
Yes.
And I want to ask what you guys think is your favorite killers of all time in the slasher movies. I'm going to start out with the one that I don't go for the obvious choices. So you should know that about me. So I'm going to say that my favorite, and he is the most sympathetic one out of them all. And I feel so bad for the guy. And I completely understand him. I know where he's coming from. He was abused horribly, and he just led a horrible life, and then he was put in a bad situation, so you could feel really bad for the guy. So there's so much sympathy for him. Even when he's doing these horrible things, you can still sympathize with him a little bit, and even when he's going for the final one, it's like you almost want him to do it. It's like, yeah, she's the one that made you this way. Kill her. I want to see you kill her. And that's Billy from Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Yes! Yes! Oh my god.
Kill that nun.
And that's what makes that one so unique to me, is that it was more of a character study than anything else. Because, yeah, it's a slasher movie, but it spent so much time building up this character and just making you feel so much sympathy for the guy.
How do you feel about his brother? Garbage day.
Garbage day! Mr. Eyebrows.
Yes.
Oh, God. You know what? I should ask Bill Mosley about that, because I know that he played him in part 3 when he had the dome on his head.
Did a much better job.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
with the dome.
That is one of the series that went downhill worse than any other series, I think.
Very cool.
But the first one, yeah, excellent. What do you think?
Favorite killers? Gosh, just, you know, part of me wants to lean towards the obvious ones. I mean, Michael Myers, I think, is absolutely iconic.
Don't do it, ghost gear.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to that's actually what I'm going to kind of dig for. One of my favorites, and this is because of my strong Italian horror film bias, is actually Barbara Steele's character in Silent Scream. I absolutely, have you guys all seen this? Silent Scream, I saw it, I'm going to date myself hideously. I saw a first run in a theater in 1979, the Parkland Theater, and I was...
secret to immortality?
The good vibes of all these wonderful horror movies are my youth.
What was it that Henry Rollins said about the
Devastating, gnarly, crushing.
That's his secret to life.
And also, you know, yeah. So that movie, I really, it's sort of a hybrid of a standard. It's early in the slasher cycle. It's just, I think they were it was in production right when Halloween came out, and it was released like the following year. But it's got a mixture of like giallo and old dark house, and she plays this very sympathetic character that has basically no dialogue, and is part of all of these strange machinations that go on with this family that I found like really captivating in its own right. And I'm also a huge fan of Barbara Steele anyway. She's brilliant, and I always love watching her mind work when she's in a movie. So that's my semi-obscuro that I would pull.
It's funny because I thought that it's hard to say what he is, but without spoiling something, but I'll just say the brother in the movie, just so I don't spoil anything.
Yeah.
But he was fascinating in the movie too, because everything you thought that he was the killer, and
there's a lot of, I mean, I suppose I kind of semi-spoil with that movie.
but there's more to it than that.
But I guess, the impulse for me to actually talk about it is because it's a little bit more nuanced, it's a little bit more character driven, and there's actually, even when you know the outcome, you can get a fair amount out of it, but, so that's fine.
I'm gonna go straight to the granddaddy, in my opinion, of the slasher film genre itself. I'm gonna go off of Hitchcock Psycho. I'm gonna
Brilliant.
have to say that Norman Bates, and this has actually come up in panel before. Norman Bates, to me, is he's just a complicated, broken boy. You think about it, like, and then when you read the backstory that Hitchcock gave him, like, he suffers from Oedipus complex, but Oedipus complex that was actually realized. Like, imagine the mental repercussions, like the psychological issues one would have with that. And then mommy dies. And then he's left to man all this stuff, and then like all the poisonous, vile stuff, vile stuff, dyslexia, it sucks. It starts to transfer, and he starts to villainize woman, hearing his mother's voice with her judgment of woman, and she's basically imposing upon woman what she is herself, deflecting, and all he has is that. All he's ever had was that. He's like, you look in the news and hear about those people, 50,000 kids and counting or something, those that cloistered, kept away from the world in an unhealthy environment. It's gonna have repercussions, and Norman Bates is your repercussion. And so when he starts doing all of that, it's just, you can't help but kind of feel sorry for the guy. It's
very true to life.
You want him to be okay. You want to think, even at the end, after he does all these horrible things, even in the terrible sequels, you want him to turn around and be like, I need help, and I'm gonna get help. But he doesn't, and so it's just like, no, man, come on,
But part two kind of goes in that direction. It's like, oh, I'm so glad he's doing better, and then it's like, oh no, downward spiral.
I mean, the Psycho sequels are quite flawed. I mean,
They are.
let's be honest, but they do have pockets of effectiveness, of efficacy, and I think that's largely due to Anthony Perkins' characterization.
Oh, yes.
This is a guy who had started out as a total romantic lead, which is ironic because he was a closeted gay man. But once he did that movie, it effectively killed anyone seeing him in anything but a role as a psychopath or a disturbed individual. And it's not really a slasher, but one of my favorite movies that came out in the wake of that, 8 years later, literally, was Pretty Poison, which is an excellent, underrated thriller that was written by, I think, who did all things, the Batman series and stuff. But it's terrific. If you haven't seen it, seek it out. It's not a slasher or a psycho film per se, but it's one of the best, wonderfully complicated thrillers of the 60s, and it makes very canny use of Perkins' sense of awkwardness and not really knowing the inherent unpredictability of what we'll do. I see an hand up here. Yes, sir.
Just for the record, I love Psycho 2 and 3.
I do too.
I have respect for the fact that you do. I mean, I'm not, that's not a more condescending than it needs to be.
What's the title of the last one you mentioned?
Pretty Poison.
Oh, Pretty Poison. Yeah, it's out on DVD, and it stars Anthony Perkins and Tuesday Weld, who was a teen idol back at that time, did the Gidget movies or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, before we get into the next one, when we're still on Anthony Perkins, there was another movie that he did, and it is not a good movie by any means, but it's another slasher movie, and if you want to see Anthony Perkins as a sleazy softcore porn director and filming a shower scene with multiple girls,
Oh yeah, he's killing people with a metal dildo, man.
watch Destroyer.
That's a great name, but
It's-
I was gonna say what my favorite slasher is.
Which is?
I love all the classics of Michael Jackson. I even love Freddy when he's scary, when he's joking.
Mhm.
My favorite movie of all time, Billy.
Christmas is, Black Christmas is, I think you might, I might almost think of it as ground zero for the slasher, the American slasher.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
it directly influenced Halloween.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Of course, Halloween directly influenced everything.
Yeah.
So,
But it's
yeah,
interesting
Christmas,
because-
anything.
Yeah.
else that you're discussing.
But yeah, that's a terrific choice, actually. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but it's
For me, that is still my absolute favorite slasher movie of all time. In fact, I would put it up there as one of my favorite horror movies in general. I have, I would say it's that and The Shining for me. And the two are just kind of like back and forth.
And what a
back and
cast.
forth.
God, all those actresses are so good. Margot Kidder, God.
She's amazing in
She's
that.
Yes.
incredible in that movie. That is just like, that's like, and that was, what was great about that is it was at a point in Hollywood history in the early 70s where people made horror movies. It was kind of symptomatic of all of that kind of renaissance of 70s cinema where you had like directors actually doing kind of ambitious things and actually, taking a formula and kind of creating something a little bit more elegant out of it, a little bit more artistic out of it that would still scare the shit out of you. So, pardon. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Love that movie. Yes, sir.
You're thinking of another film that kind of plays with the slasher genre, but it's not necessarily a slasher genre, but it is in a way. But the killer is the protagonist of the film. He shows up, knows what I'm talking about. The movie May.
Nice.
Yes, that's like when I showed you that
And
movie.
you showed me that. That's why.
It's like one of my favorites. She's a nice girl.
She's a weird little pig. That's what they say in the movie.
But with it kind of follows the sort of same
I love
themes
that
of a
movie.
slasher, though. Wouldn't you say so?
I would say that actually it works. It is a slasher film. I mean, just because she does what she does, I don't want to spoil it. She does slash a little bit. She's
Oh, yeah.
very hands-on.
Mhm. It gets to that point later on. Yeah.
What about The Audition? Is The Audition a slasher film?
Audition.
Audition, I would think that's more of a
There's,
psychological horror.
it is psychological horror,
I
yes,
wouldn't
but
call
there
it
is a lot
slasher.
of, like, there are some sequences where it does show her doing some stabbings.
But we become intimately acquainted with her. She is not.
That's
She is
true.
not a shadowy, elusive
No,
figure
she's
that
not.
mysteriously slinks in and slinks out and kills something.
That's
There-
true.
The integral component in that movie is that we ostensibly know who she is, and then of course we don't. But so I kind of also, you don't have a body count. I mean, I know you don't have to have a body count, but yeah, I'm just.
Halloween itself had a very low
Well,
body count.
or Audition does have a body count. Her teacher, her stepfather, another teacher, and
But-
then the new guy.
But it's not as.
We don't watch them all
high.
fall.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
makes
kind of-
sense.
but I
But we
mean-
do watch them all fall in May, but we do get to know the character personally in May. So
Yeah.
that's where my conflict is there. But my next question is do you consider Nightmare on Elm Street a
Definitely,
slasher?
definitely,
Okay, but we
yes.
get to know Freddy on a very intimate level.
Yes. Well, I love it. It's always a question of degree. And this is a very interesting point because you do kind of get to know him. And I think, when I first saw the movie, I didn't think of it as a slasher, honestly. I thought of it as just a dark fairy tale horror movie.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I was in high school when I saw it at the theater first run. And one of the things that really struck me is it was one of the earlier movies that I had seen where it really capitalized on dream logic, where you couldn't argue with some of the cliches that you see in a slasher movie. Don't go into that room, don't go into that door. Everyone who's had a dream, or a nightmare more appropriately, has walked through a door that they're not supposed to, has done something, or been in some situation where it's like, if you were conscious, if you were awake, there's no way in hell you'd do it. And so with that element in mind, I felt like, I didn't think of it even as a slasher. As it went on, it definitely took on
picked up the slasher name.
I'm sorry, that's a good observation.
I agree with those things a lot about
slash home invasion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can have a home invasion story and a slasher story, like,
Well, like The Collector.
The Collector,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's the thing with the slasher movies, is that they're constantly evolving. And it goes through so many different stages. Like, there's several key notes during the history of slasher movies. There's like Halloween, and that sets off the 80s slasher craze. And then by the end of the 80s, it kind of dies down. There's not much going on for years. And then Scream comes along. And then you got the teen slasher cycle. And then that picks up, and you got like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, you got Valentine, you got movies like that. And then even eventually, people start to get sick of that one, and even that starts to morph into other movies. And then,
You get a little bit of that with torture porn.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
you got, when Saw came out, then you start getting into the torture porn, which I consider those slashers as well. It's a different type of a slasher, but they're slashers through and through. So then that picked up, and then there's all these movies like Saw, and then there's the Hostel movies, and then it just continually evolves and morphs into something else. So there's always something new. It's like they never run out of ideas.
And it seems to me like the basic building blocks of the slasher translate well, you know, like horror does in general. You know, we create our own, you know, byproduct of our fears, given the time that we're living in and the situations that we're going through, and what society is doing at whatever particular point. And that's why we have things like torture porn in this era of reality television, and you know, xenophobic fear of anyone who's outside of, you know, of our, you know, perception or understanding. You know, and one of the things that I love actually about Hostel, which I think is 1/3 absolute masterpiece genius and 2/3, well, we can argue about that, is that it taps into our fear of foreigners in general.
Mhm.
All right, and that was the xenophobia that, gonna get political here, that was like part and parcel of the Bush era. You know, we don't trust anybody who is not American. Because, you know, and it plays brilliantly with that paranoia, because you see these guys, these party guys walk into this, you know, Eastern European village, and every single human being in that village who is a resident is looking at them like they're gonna be slabs of meat soon.
like it's a segment for The Wicker Man.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very interesting to ponder how much it has, how versatile the slasher formula is. Which is funny, when I first got on this panel, I was thinking, oh, you know, okay, well, what about, you know, people getting stabbed and Jason, Freddy, whatever. But it's been very interesting kind of chewing over, you know, how many permutations you
do
have.
it.
Yeah.
And even when I was writing the book, I was coming up with things like, I would get stumped myself, and I would say, like what you're talking about, is this really a slasher? Is this
Yeah.
Let's take more brains.
Since we don't have a whole lot of time, you mentioned it, and we've spent so much time talking about the killers. The one that I really want to talk about, and that's an absolute necessity, and we talked about that in a panel once, is the Final Girl.
We talk about it every year.
Yeah, the kick-ass Final Girl. And I just wanted to go between us and just say who your favorite Final Girl actually is.
There's a lot of competition. I'm going to take the obvious one, which is Sharni Vincent, and you're next. Jesus, what an amazing, phenomenal final girl. Just, I didn't know you'd be so good at killing. I tell you, and that movie is brilliant anyway. I mean, I just am really. So yeah, she would probably be. Now, of course, I've got my sentimental favorites. I mean, Adriana King, I was super fond of. I always thought she was adorable because she just looked like a normal, you know, like a normal girl next door. You know, she wasn't some dynamically enhanced, you know, blonde or whatever.
And she wasn't all goody either. I mean,
Exactly,
yeah,
yes.
she was down the smoke pod and placed your poker. And,
Hell yeah. So those are my dual favorites. You guys?
Definitely, I would have to say hands down, it would be Nightmare on Elm Street. Nancy.
Oh, I love Nancy so hard.
Yeah, because she fought her fears and she went all out. Like she we trapped her entire house, and she's like, I am gonna get this guy.
Which is a predecessor to the You're Next.
Yeah, and
when I think about it now.
She physically lured him in there and into her world and into all these traps so that she can fight him on her own turf. And that is something that really paved the way for a lot of them since then. Because before that, for the most part, it was like run and scream and then maybe like turn around and attack back. But this is like, no, you're going to come to me and I'm just going to fight you on my own terms.
I'm going to put some Rube Goldberg crap together and you're
Yeah.
going down.
Yeah.
Claw boy.
Yeah.
Every year I see it, and if anybody's sat in on any of the panels I've been on, she seems to come up every effing time. She's the antagonist and the protagonist of all of the stories. Her name is Tomie, and she is a manga and horror film character. And what she is she exists. She is an infinite being, and she has billions of doppelgangers. And they are all one community consciousness. Like it's all like there is one mother brain to it all. And she pulls out the worst in men and women. Women get jealous and crazy and want to stab her to death. And men get jealous and crazy and want to stab her to death. And so like she's always the final girl because she's always back, and it's not like she makes good people do bad things, but she pulls out the bad in people. So to me, she's kind of a hero because she's withstanding like all these different incidents of getting killed as the final girl by these terrible people. So somebody else doesn't get killed in her place. So if somebody's going to die, why not her? So she can come right back and just sink her teeth into them. And so Tomie, she is my favorite final girl. And check her out. She is so good. It's a good manga. It's a good film series. It's Japanese.
And we're about out of time here, so I will just leave on one note here, and I will leave it up to everybody here to just pick one that everybody should go out and watch that they might not have seen before, some obscure one. I am going to go with one of my all-time favorites. It's an Italian film, very brutal, very underrated too, and it's called Anthropophagus. It's The Grim Reaper, directed by Joe D'Amato, and you just have to see it for yourself. I would suggest watching the unrated version, but you might want to take a moment and go like this. You might know what I'm talking about. It's infamous for that, but there is so much more to it. Like there's so much suspense to this movie.
I would respectfully agree to disagree on that. I bought the double disc set, and I did something that I never do with my horror DVDs, and I sold it. But that's for another panel, and God knows we're going from tiny regular human-sized slashers to I think it's a kaiju panel this time.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Oh, hell yes.
Okay, I'm moderating.
Yeah. Is it in this room? Yeah. I think it's in this room. Well, let me get the hell off stage and sit down.
Woo! I said Koji.